Well, I have to say I had a wonderful experience this morning because the monastery, Amaravati monastery, which is actually in a sense behind these classes in the background, was open to the public for the first time, open in terms of being able to go there from 6:30 in the morning and be there all day till 9:30 in the evening. There are a few restrictions in place, but if you have the time and the space and feel able to, it's a really wonderful place to go to, especially on a day like today when the sun was shining, the sky was blue, nice and fresh, and the monastery is very quiet at the moment, so there's not much interaction because it's on winter retreat, so everything goes very quiet at the monastery. So if you want a bit of peace and quiet and want to walk around a field or sit in the temple, it's open. So I, can really recommend it as a place of healing on all levels, on the level of the body, level of the mind, and feelings and emotions, and in the higher realms as well. So something to savor if you have the opportunity to do so. Well, many of you are regular to the class, so I don't have to say too much, but there may be someone who hasn't been before, so I'll just run through the format of the evening a little bit. We will have a sort of little opening bit of chanting. The chanting really, as it were, sets the tone. It sort of signifies a change into a different perspective. Instead of being preoccupied with worldly concerns, whether it be politics, economy, what we're doing is shifting our attention to self-improvement, self-development, personal growth, one could call it. Personal growth, which leads in there being no person, just a process. So it actually leads to greater understanding, greater insight, because actually we can only be really happy if we have insight into the way things are. And that's really what the task of this class is. And effectively all the teachings are really primarily concerned with making sense of the reality we find ourselves in, and question and investigate the assumptions we have, the perceptions we have, just to develop a greater alignment with the way things are. Because ultimately we can only be happy with the truth. We can never be happy with something which isn't true. It's impossible. And we have the evidence of what life is about right in our lives, every day, every minute. And that's really what this practice is about, and why mindfulness is at the heart of it, in terms of this witnessing, observing, knowing process in which all our shortcomings, all our assumptions, all our ignorance, everything that we know, everything appears and can be seen and known. And we can have a response to that, one which either is aligned with the way things are or out of kilter. When it's out of kilter, we're not happy. It's as simple as that. And it's a transformational practice. So it's not about dogma. It's not about just taking opinions and views. It's about gaining true insight into one's individual experience of reality on the physical level, mental, emotional level, and the higher levels of meditation. So the chanting is very simple. I'll light a candle behind me. I'll chant the opening dedication of offerings. We will then take the 3 refuges, which is really very significant. Although it's done on a regular basis, and it can be quite easy to make it formulaic, it actually is quite a significant moment to reflect and consider what one is actually doing when one takes the 3 refuges. What is one taking refuge in? It's not a Netflix program, it's not a party, it's not a holiday. It's taking refuge in the way things are, in the truth of an awakened mind, the truth that can be found in all teachings that point to the way things are, and taking refuge also in the company and inspired by those, as it were, who have realized the truth and can act as guides, pointers, helpers, supporters. In fact, the collective community of all truth seekers, wisdom seekers. So that's what we're taking refuge in, for a process which is transformational, and therefore quite challenging at times, because what we're working with is our whole reactive process. All our likes and dislikes come up like in a panoramic view and experience, sensory experience. And our practice consists in witnessing this, in being with it, and not getting lost in all the reactions that arise. And that's challenging because it challenges our assumptions and our perceptions. So the chanting at the beginning basically sets the tone and creates an association in the mind between the teachings and our daily life. So we'll do that with the help of Wendy at the Buddhist Society, who will do a screen share for us. And I will turn around and light the candle on my little shrine here, and then we'll do the chanting. You unfortunately have to all be muted because collectively it's a cacophony of sounds when we all chant together. And you're free to join in or just witness, observe. You don't have to bow. It has a lot of significance. We can talk about bowing later on, but it's something we can do together or just join in as an observer. So, dedication of offerings. Yo so bhagava araham samma sambuddho. To the Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment. Swakato yena bhagavata dhammo. To the teaching which he expounded so well. Supatipanno yasa bhagavato savaka sangho. And to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Tamayam bhagavantam sadamam sasangham. To these the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. Ime sakare hiyataraham aropite apipujayama. We render with offerings our rightful homage. Sadhu no bhante bhagava suchira parini bhutopi. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, Pachima Janata Nukantamanasa, still had compassion for later generations. Ime sakare dugatapanna karabhute patiganhatu. May these simple offerings be accepted. Amha kambi garatam hitaya sukhaya, for a long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. Araham samma sambuddho bhagava. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one. Buddham bhagavantam abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. Swakato bhagavata dhammo. The teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam namasami. I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham namami, I bow to the Sangha. Chant the preliminary homage. Handamayam Buddhasa Bhagavato Purabhaganamakaram Karamase. Now let us pay preliminary homage to the Buddha. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. We now move to the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Page 1 to 8. We'll go to the 3rd paragraph, having sung the preliminary homage. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. To the Buddha I go for refuge. To the Dhamma I go for refuge. To the Sangha I go for refuge. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the 2nd time, to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the 2nd time, to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the 2nd time, to the Sangha I go for refuge. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the 3rd time, to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the 3rd time, to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the 3rd time, to the Sangha I go for refuge. We'll now take the 5 precepts. Panatipata verimini sikhapadam samadhyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana verimini sikhapadam samadhyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kamesu mechachara verimini sikhapadam samadhyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musawada verimini sikhapadam samadhyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Surameraya majja pamadatana verimini sikhapadam samadhyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikhapadani silena sugatim yanti, silena bhogasampada, silena niputim yanti, tasma silam visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And bow 3 times. Like what we'll do now is just sit quietly for a bit. 30 minutes or so. We do this to create a bit of space around whatever we might be experiencing. And most of the time in our daily lives, we're always going out to things with our mind and receiving all the data, all the stimulus that our busy society provides us with, whether it be Radio 4 or Radio 2 or classical FM, or whether it's the news or telephones, conversations. What we try and do as often as we can is to break that up a little bit with some space, an opportunity to allow the mind to basically rest and go inwards and just go into pure receptive mode, observing, witnessing mode. And we do this in our sitting practice, formal practice of just allowing the body to relax, sitting comfortably and upright. What we're doing is practicing interoception, in other words, just an awareness of body sensations. Not only on the outside, in terms of our skin, our eyes, ears, nose, mouth and tongue, but also internally, just aware of the flow of energy, the movement of energy in the chest and the heart region, in the belly, and just allowing the absence of external stimulation to facilitate and enable a gradual, natural, unforced relaxation, slowing down, whilst maintaining a posture which is upright, conducive to supporting attention. You might find that the body quite naturally might take a slightly deeper in-breath and almost with a sigh, just let go of some of the stuff it might have been carrying. So the body scan can be one way of just bringing attention to the whole body. We can notice our feet, our legs, the weight of our body on the cushion or stool. Noticing the back, lower back, upper back, straightening the spine if we need to. And noticing the rib cage expand and contract with each in-breath and out-breath. We can pause momentarily at the end of the out-breath for a second or two. And just notice how that feels in the body. So what we're doing is releasing a few endorphins here and there. Just by simply coming into the present without any sense of pressure or duty or obligation. Breathing in, preferably through the nose. Breathing out through the nose. Noticing the flow of air in the nostril, both left and right. Noticing the flow of air down the windpipe and into the lungs and heart region. As thoughts arise or narratives arise, we don't fight them. All we do is move our attention back to the body and the breath. The 4 foundations of mindfulness offer a wonderful guide, and they start with the awareness of the body, whatever its posture might be. In this case, sitting, but it could be lying, or walking, or standing. So it's just awareness of the whole body from crown of the head to the tips of the toes. So we can be aware of our head, our face, our neck, shoulders, upper torso, the arms, our legs all the way down, the soles of the feet. Firmly grounded and rooted. And at the top of the head, aware of the crown, an imaginary golden thread connecting us with the sky. Second foundation of mindfulness notices the quality of the sensations, whether their sensations are pleasant, unpleasant, or just simply neutral. So it's like a qualitative assessment. It's feedback, so we can adjust the posture if we need to. And we just notice our relationship to the sensations of the body. The feeling tone. Very simple. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. This is like an anchoring in the present moment. Just being fully present with the body and all the sensations and feelings of the body in the here and now. It's like this. The moment we notice our mind has wandered off somewhere, well, at that moment we're immediately back on track again, present to what's happening, to what we're noticing. observing the inhalation, sensation of exhalation. Resting in being present to this now, always now. Noticing the absence of sound. noticing where our attention has gone or is. If we notice any tension building up in any part of the body, be it the legs or the back or the shoulders, wherever, we observe our mental reaction to it and any associated tension that might build up, contraction of some kind. And we breathe in through that space and exhale and relax into that space. And see if we notice any difference. Breathing in and breathing out into that space. Exhaling and letting go. Breathing in, breathing out. Noticing the mind and our attention. Noticing the feeling state, present, unpleasant, neutral. Not holding to either, just simply allowing the natural breathing process of in-breath and out-breath. So feel free to adjust your posture if you need to. Notice the sensations as you do. As you noticed, the focus was primarily on body sensations and the feelings associated with them. But just to complete the picture, I'll say a little bit about the other two foundations of mindfulness, which is the mind state, the state of mind we're in, and the contents of the mind. It's also good to know why we don't pay as much attention perhaps to mind states as we do to physical sensations and the feelings that arise. That's because the body is here, it's now, it's instant, it's direct, it's immediate. We live in a society where there's a great deal of thinking, worrying, analyzing, dwelling on the past, planning for the future. So our cognitive faculties are just working overtime all the time. And that so easily takes us away from the present moment. Why this emphasis on the present moment? Well, the present moment is the only place that's actually real. It's only now that's real. Our meditation of a few minutes ago is our meditation of a few minutes ago. We might remember it as an idea. We may still be having the effects, and will be having the effects of that meditation, but those effects have followed the meditation. The meditation, in a sense, is over. So we're now present in this moment, and that moment is just a memory. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless or has no value, but it's just really about knowing it for what it is, a memory. But what we can notice is how we feel after the meditation. How does it feel right now? Well, that in itself is mindfulness. It's just paying attention, being aware. It's just being conscious. And that same consciousness, that same awareness or being present, can notice our general mind state. And that takes us into the realm of emotions. And what we begin to see, of course, is the connection between our emotional states of mind and the body. Because what we think about, our general background, emotional state, is directly linked to how we feel in our body. So this is really just an investigation, it's just an inquiry, seeing the connection between body, the feelings that arise in the body, and the tone, the sort of mental tone that we have, whether if we're feeling melancholy, sad, happy, glad. And we can then link that with the fourth foundation of mindfulness, which is the contents of the mind. Generally speaking, they focus on some sort of profound truths, the characteristics of existence, for instance. But I find it's very helpful to recognize the connection between the contents of our thoughts with our mind state, how that relates to body feelings and the body itself, because they're all interconnected. These are very simple, phenomenological facts of experience. They're just a simple way, direct way of investigating our experience of what it's like to be a human sentient being with this wonderful ability we have to reflect. And be aware of being aware. So, my question to you is, how does it feel right now after the meditation? How does it feel to hear the reflections that are being shared? What comes up? What's the reaction? Well, all the time to all these experiences, there is a knowing that it feels like this, or it feels like that. And then a thought may pop up, a content of the mind, which says, oh no, I don't agree with that. Well, how does that feel? Almost every thought, every state of mind has a feeling associated with it. The feeling is not in the head, it's in the body. So what we see is that we're a unified system. And that really leads us to the 5 skandhas, or 5 heaps, 5 aggregates, which is a very simple way of categorizing or understanding what a human being is made of. Well, they're made of a body, of feelings, of perceptions, consciousness, and it's a mix of all of those. None of them can exist in separation from the others. Complex, stick that hand and say interbeing. Not only are we an interbeing in our whole body, mind system, but this interbeing of all these factors and elements, interconnectedness, interdependence, to use a traditional Buddhist phrase, it's also related to the environment that we're in. We can't exist without the environment, which is why the madness of our current behavior on this planet ignores a basic fact of existence, that everything is interconnected. Mess about with the environment, we're messing about with ourselves. Mistreating, abusing the environment, we're mistreating, abusing ourselves. The sadness is, of course, we're depriving ourselves of all the wonderful opportunities that existence offers us, which is ultimately liberation. Liberation is often spoken of in very high-glowing words. But liberation comes from the simplicity of seeing how things are. And how are things? Always changing. It's a core characteristic of existence. It's pointing to that. It's really the essence of practice, is to see the impermanence of everything. But that impermanence doesn't mean the absence of anything. Quite the opposite. When we see into the nature of existence and see that it's all impermanent, it's actually liberating, because we are less likely to be trapped in the forms of thought, feeling, and perception that we often get lost in. But we can only do that when we wake up to what is real. Is a take or an emphasis, which is so beautifully exemplified by Luang Por Sumedho's teachings, that the only thing that's real is our awareness, our consciousness. He keeps bringing our attention to this again and again and again, as do many, many teachers who have realized and have come to the same understanding of reality. So our practice of mindfulness, of meditation, is about being conscious and present, and not getting sidetracked or pushed away by aversion or drawn by attraction and pleasure to either fantasies or dreams, or getting lost in the narratives. At the same time, we can't dismiss the fact that this is what we experience in our meditation, so we notice that. So what we're struggling, what is it that is transformed? It's our reactivity, our attachment to thoughts, to states of mind, to sensations. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. We like feeling comfortable. We like pleasure. We avoid pain. But can we find that? Can we notice that still point which observes and notices the ups and downs of everyday life, of sensations? That still point, which is behind all activity, behind all perception, behind feelings, always present. There's a knowing. But it's very difficult to, as it were, relax into just knowing, even though it's the only thing that's real, because of our conditioning, because of our habits, because of social pressures that we've been exposed to, which we start developing almost from the moment we're conceived. The state of mind our mother might have been in as she was carrying us in her womb, what she was eating, what she was worried about, all of that would have had an effect on us in our embryonic form. And then we come into this world, quite a painful journey in itself, both for the mother and often for the baby. And we're then exposed to the whole field of energy that exists in the home. But we have seem to have an incredible resilience and capacity to survive all sorts of states of mind that our parents, our mother might be having. We then have brothers and sisters, perhaps, other children. So for the earlier formative years of our life, we're exposed to a massive experiences, some of which are pleasant, some which are unpleasant. And we develop strategies. We try and learn from our friends and from our peers, learn from our parents, how to cope, how to manage, how to find a place in this world. We then go through adolescence and the nightmare of trying to break away from our parents, have our own identity, try and be different, and we end up being the same as everybody else, trying to be different of our age group. And this is a cycle which we can observe. And the more reflective we are, the more questioning we are, the more likely we start looking for answers elsewhere. And probably in one way or another, most of us in this gathering here today have found that maybe this has something to offer which our conventional solutions don't quite offer with the same certainty. We find that we tend to gravitate to what we intuitively know to be true, and there is something about the truth which is both frightening but also wonderfully reassuring. And so we come across one tradition or another tradition, experiment, until we find, quote unquote, a sort of our spiritual home, a body of teachings. And the nice thing about a teaching such as the Buddha's teachings is that it has a track record. So it's a tried and tested model. But even though it's tried and tested, we still have to find out for ourselves. It's not something that we just do automatically and get the results, because it relies on this personal examination, investigation, testing. It's for many of us in the West, it's very much an inquiring process. It's a questioning process. But it comes with all sorts of bells and whistles, which are really very reassuring and supportive. It has a form, it has a structure, which in psychological terms could be described as a container. The psychological container is a concept from the psychoanalytic world. Makes it safe to explore. One is held. So even as one goes through doubt and anxiety and uncertainty, there is a sense that it's being contained and managed. In some way makes it more bearable. So I could say that the Buddhist tradition potentially offers a wonderful container for this inquiry, this examination, investigation of experience. Because when we start examining our lives, everything's up for grabs potentially. And it can be quite unsettling. So depending on how secure an upbringing we've had, how much love we've been exposed to, how confident we feel in exploring the unknown, so our path progresses. But I don't want to for any second dismiss or devalue the devotional side of practice, which is basically about cultivating positive emotional states of mind. It's an incredibly important resource. But those positive states of mind are best aligned to truth teachings, rather than just finding a little comfortable, furry, warm, safe little secure place on the conditioned level, which basically protects us from this inquiring approach. It actually enables us to inquire and ask profound questions about who am I? What am I doing here? Who are all these people in my lives? If this is all constantly changing, where do I find security? Where do I find safety? Where is it? Where is security? Well, the security is in truth, because when we realize the interconnected nature of all existence, and that the changing nature of phenomena essentially, as it were, makes this existence both empty and full at the same time, is a sort of paradox which the thinking mind can't really grasp very well. Why do we have this word emptiness? Why are we trying to wake up to the emptiness, to the no self, not self of existence? Well, because our true self, if we want to play around with words, is our awareness, but not the contents of our awareness. There's nothing solid in awareness. It just allows us to have a relationship to phenomena that is healthy. So we put our trust and our faith and find our refuge in our awareness and not in anything, whether it be a thought, a feeling, a philosophical concept. It can all be helpful, but that's not the answer. The answer is in knowing this moment for what it is, simply knowing the way things are. That's where we find true peace. And the body will respond. The body will tell you. It's like a Geiger counter. When we're exposed to truth, our intuitive wisdom recognizes it. And when it doesn't recognize it, it might just reflect on it until it's time for it to be recognized. So these are the thoughts that come to mind as we sit here. I'm very open to picking up on any themes or questions. I hope it makes sense what I've been saying. And if it doesn't, please declare so, say so. This is really a shared inquiry. I may be the one speaking, but please do feel free to share either your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your disagreements, your approval, whatever. So all you have to do is unmute yourself. Hopefully you have that capacity. The chat is not easy to run. I much prefer a verbal question if possible. I know I've said a lot, so I'm quite happy to sit in silence whilst you all reflect. Wendy, is it possible to unmute? I see Jean wishes to say something, but can't unmute herself. Let's see if I can do it. Let's see if I can do it on my. Oh, there we go. Wonderful.
Thank you. Can I ask you something?
You're unmuted.
When you're asking about awareness, I have understood it to be awareness, the six senses, but I mainly go for thoughts. Therefore, it seems I'm living in my head instead of not all my body, and I found it uncomfortable. However, as I go on meditating, I find the body includes my head as well. and I can from my body, as you say, pick up what I'm feeling and thinking and moving. But I just wondered, it seems I always went for the thought, and sometimes I think if I'm eating, I should be aware of what I'm eating, and when I'm seeing, I should be more aware of the other senses. And I just started to think like that, and I just wondered if you'd offer me some feedback, please.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think you're absolutely on the right path. What you recognize is what most of us recognize: how much we live in our heads, in our thoughts, in our concepts, in our ideas about what we should or shouldn't be doing, the past, the future. And there's something immensely liberating as we start connecting with the sensations in the body, and as it were, bringing that into the field of attention, field of awareness. So you're absolutely on the right path. It's quite a transformative practice, because what we notice is how the body communicates our aversion to things or our attraction to things. How it's, what a driving force the sensations of the body are in terms of like and dislike. And that leads to the words that we use, how we relate to other people. If we're unhappy with somebody, well, we can work out all the reasons with our head as to why we're unhappy. But the unhappiness is a feeling somewhere in the body which says, I don't like this person, or I don't like what they've said. And that's what's informing our speech. So making this connection between head, emotions, and body is just basically learning and witnessing what an amazing vehicle we're in, what an amazing form we're in, and how much we can learn. And that ties in absolutely beautifully with the Buddha's teachings, who spoke about this fathom-long body, yes, with its perceptions and its consciousness, yes, that's where we find the answer. It contains all the answers, because we are basically a product of the universe. We contain the whole universe in us, in one form or another, whether it be on the level of stardust, yes, or all the patterns, the whole of creation is in us, or the whole cosmos is essentially in us. So even though we have a limited sort of lifespan, limited senses, potentially we have all the key ingredients of existence, which is impermanence. This whole form is constantly changing. Feelings come and go, sensations come and go, thoughts come and go, ideas come and go. And there's an incredible fluidity in everything. And waking up to that allows us to see that really the whole of existence operates this way. And we're looking for happiness and well-being in existence. And we can only find it when we see that we can't find the happiness in existence, that actually our happiness is in our knowing of how things are and not in what we know. So that sounds sort of a bit of a sort of catch-22 phrasing of words, but it's a sort of paradox in words. But, when we know something, we just simply know it. There's just nothing to argue with. Whether we're right or wrong is another matter. If it proves that what we're experiencing in the moment changes, well, we just notice the change. We know when we don't know. It's a different type of knowing. It's not knowing about, it's just knowing in the moment. If we're confused about something and don't know something, we just have to say, instead of going, oh my gosh, I don't know, we say, oh, right, okay, so this is what not knowing feels like. So the knowing we're talking about is a much broader, much more inclusive, totally inclusive knowing, which is essentially consciousness, awareness. And consciousness is consciousness, very simple. And so we notice through consciousness. So to come back to what you were saying, absolutely, most of the time we're here, or if we get possessed with a strong feeling, we may get completely possessed by anger or hatred or some really strong negative emotion. And what we're doing with our sitting practice is creating a bit more space around all these manifestations of experience. And something happens. We start, our relationship to the world changes, our relationship towards ourselves starts changing. And if this is combined with the ethical sort of virtuous practices that are encouraged in most of the great spiritual traditions, and certainly in Buddhism, we cultivate generosity, sense of connection and awareness of others. We start witnessing and exploring the connection between cause and effect. So we start understanding and making sense of a world which can be very, very confusing, and is confusing for most of us at some point in life. And it starts making sense. And we start resting simply in, one could say, being aware, and just resting in that. And something intuitively responds to that. There's a sense of centeredness, of connection, and that's because we, as it were, rise above or don't get so caught up in our aversion and attraction to things. We notice attraction, we notice aversion, but we're not controlled or dominated by it. But there is a transitional process, because obviously we, quote unquote, fail all too often. We get angry, we get irritated, we get impatient, we have negative frames of mind. So we practice right effort. When we notice those frames of mind, the negative ones, we try not to encourage them. We do our best to cultivate a more positive response. And we do have some agency in this. We're not completely helpless. We do have a say. It's a question of pausing, stopping, reflecting, and taking some decisions. And the decisions that we take consciously have an effect. So that's why. But to take a decision consciously, we have to be conscious. It's very simple. So at that point, we start taking responsibility for what we do. We develop the ability to respond appropriately to whatever situation we find ourselves in. And it's a learning process. So it's a very long answer to your point, but thank you very much, Jean. So it was a very good one.
Hi, Nick. Hi.
Can't see you. Who's speaking?
Will.
Will. Oh, hello, Will.
Hi.
Oh, yes, I see you now.
Yeah, less a question as such. I think it's probably before Christmas or a few weeks ago. You mentioned something that stuck with me, which was, as lay practitioners in particular, our relationships and interactions with people are the sort of crucible of our practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very pertinent for us. I was just wondering if you'd be able to expand on that at all.
Yeah. Our relationship with others is quite critical to our personal development, to being human. We're social beings. And so personal interactions is really very formative, very informative as well, and quite crucial. When I was speaking about that, I was talking in contrast to a monastic's life, because what we are in as lay people is often in personal, intimate relationships of one type or another, whether it be intimate, emotionally, or physically, doesn't really matter. But and it's very easy to become entangled in relationships and quite lost in them due to sort of patterns of attachment and that we have been exposed to and grow up into and manifest. So it leads often to conflict. If one becomes a monastic, one basically is making a commitment to a celibate life, which means one basically relinquishes personal relationships. One also, of course, relinquishes many other accoutrements of normal lay life: money, no access to money, complete dependence on lay support. So it sets a very, very tight, comprehensive sort of, to use that word I used earlier, container. It becomes a vehicle which really tests one's reactivity, because we can't just go off and make yourself a bit of toast when you want to. You have your meal at a certain time of the day, and then you can't eat after that. You have to work with the community and getting up at a certain time, practicing as they're doing now at the monastery. So there's a very, very sort of structured frame of life, which paradoxically also includes a lot of space for personal practice and reflection. If you go off and have some time in a kuti, a little hut on your own for 10 days or longer, you're exposed without access to television or radio or necessarily books. You're exposed to a lot of material that comes up from the unconscious. Now, a lay person, such as most of us here, we're all lay people, can have much more agency in our lives, how we use our time, when we sleep, when we get up. So we can develop a lifestyle which is much more accommodating to our likes and dislikes. But what we find is it doesn't necessarily make us happy. Yeah. We find that we have the freedom to go on the net, to go onto dating sites, go and see films. We know the sort of quote unquote pleasures of the world are manifest. There's so many of them. So to start getting inspired and to be inspired by a truth teaching, which actually makes one question everything, it makes one question the values that we're caught up in, the system we might be in, the family we might be in, the relationship we might be in. And it sets up all sorts of conflicts potentially. If one is with a partner, one's suddenly saying, well, actually, I'm not going to go on holiday because I want to go on a retreat. Well, that's not part of our contract. We got together, fell in love with each other. What are you doing going off on a retreat? What about me? Perfectly valid question. How does one reconcile this need to go on retreat, to practice, to not watch the television in the evening or in the morning, not listen to the radio, but actually sit and not have breakfast together? There are all sorts of complications and tensions can build in. And basically what it starts highlighting is why the monastic form developed. It developed for those people who are willing to actually step out of many of the things that we're totally accustomed to and used to having and relinquish them. So it's a path of relinquishment. Now, this isn't to punish. It's not a sort of sadomasochistic practice. It's actually creating conditions which can be like a sort of hothouse, like a greenhouse to personal development in the spiritual sense. To wake up to what? To wake up to the way things are. So the aim is the same, but the context is different. So whereas a monk has relinquished life as we know it, as lay people know it, we have to relinquish the part of our practice sometimes. We can't go on a retreat. So what we do, we might seethe with resentment. Well, we know that resentment is not a good feeling. The body feels like toxins running through it as we resent our partner for preventing us from going, or our obligations may prevent us from going. We may have children, we may have a job that we've got to perform or carry out to earn money. So how does one accommodate this? How does one include that in a practice of awareness? Well, we have to work out our own forms in the context that we find ourselves in, depending on where we are, what's happened, all the things that have led up to this point of what am I going to do with my time? Am I going to have this second meal today? I've had a lot of food today. Do I need this meal? No, I don't, so I don't have it. But so one's very exposed in a sense in the decision-making process, because we don't have a bell that rings at 7 o'clock at home and takes us to a meditation stool where we sit down, or meditation cushion, and structures the evening with chanting, meditation, and reflections. This is something that we have to, as it were, do of our own free will. So our crucible of practice is to wake up, what is actually happening here? And certainly it was a great conflict for me, because I've always been very inspired in trying to find the truth. And I had to somehow reconcile my family life, my personal life, my working professional life with my interest in the Dhamma. And it appeared to be conflicting. I'm glad to say that conflict has largely disappeared. I just basically know that there are certain things that we can experience on retreat, which we can't experience in lay life on its own, that actually time alone is very important. And I've been very fortunate to be able to carve out some of that time. But essentially it comes down to some core principles. And the core one, right at the heart of it all, is in any context, one can stop, pause, and say, right now, it's just like this. So the external manifestations of our practice may vary depending on the conditions, but at the heart of it, the truth teachings stand true for layperson and monastic alike, with no differentiation. The forms may vary, the decisions may vary, but at the heart of it is a burning desire, a curiosity, a wanting to know, and leading a moral and ethical life, which is why we have the 5 precepts, or 8 if we choose them, which basically give one a form of reference to refer to, which is why initially it's like a declaration of values, declaration of principles, and then it's the question of putting them into practice. And at the end of the day, realization, whether it's that of a lay person or a monastic, makes no difference. Realization of the way things are is a universal potential realization. And as conscious human beings, we have that capacity to wake up to the way things are. Well, I hope my answer has made some sense, because it's quite a long one and perhaps a bit complex. But I'm open to any questions that you may have.
No, that was very inspiring. Thank you, Nick, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Just like to say thank you, Nick. This is Susan here.
Hello, Susan. Hello.
Hello. Your words have indeed been very inspiring tonight. You've touched on so many truths. You've touched me personally in many ways, and I just want to thank you. It's really been an amazing evening. I could go on listening to you for a long time yet. Thank you.
Okay. You know, there's in the Dhammapada, which is a collection of sort of short little sayings, which is available on the internet and in various publications. There's this wonderful sort of summary of what are the principles we lead our life by, which is we try and avoid evil, do good, and purify the mind. So that those three simple principles apply to any lifestyle, monastic or lay. Do good, avoid evil, and purify the mind. What does purifying the mind mean? Purifying the mind means living an ethical, virtuous, respectful life, one which takes other people's needs into account as well as one's own. It means being truthful. It means avoiding sensual indulgence, doing things that cloud the mind and clarity. So just coming back to those core basic principles gives us all that we need to know. And then hopefully we've had enough upbringing, enough exposure to good people and bad people, good situations, bad situations, to intuit and recognize within ourselves, am I doing the right thing at this moment? Which is why I love those 5 factors of right speech. You know, is it true? What's happening at the moment? Is it true? Not only true in terms of having to communicate something to somebody else, but am I right about what's happening at the moment? Am I going to say or do something that is helpful or not? So it's just this reflective, beautiful space that we all have access to. You know, is it the right time to be doing or saying what I'm doing? You know, it's late at night. You know, there's that interesting program I wanted to see on iPlayer, and I can do it now. But then I've got to wake up early in the morning, and I would like to sit. But you know, maybe I'll go for the iPlayer thing. And you know, well, hold on, is this? You know, do I really need to see it? Is this the right thing to be doing? It's just a pause, which helps make one a decision. So, is it the right time to be doing it? The fourth one is it kindly? Is it done in the right spirit? You know, am I being kind to myself in watching that program at 11 o'clock at night, when really ideally I should be asleep, so I can get up early in the morning and have a quiet, good start to the day. And so just having this questioning approach with a value system which is based on virtue and goodness is basically the information that we need and have access to. And then we take a decision, and whatever decision we take has its consequence. And that's the thing that the Buddha Dhamma teaches us, yes, is that whatever conscious decision we take, we reap the fruits of that action, word, or deed, or word. So it makes us responsible human beings. It teaches us that there is a connection between what we say or do and what follows. So doing it on the basis of truth and love will have a good outcome. It's always better to be the victim of cruelty or unfairness rather than a perpetrator. So when I say a victim, not just to submit to it, but just to accept the fact that sometimes injustices happen, but not become a perpetrator and be cruel or unkind through greed or selfishness. So I'd like to sort of simplify my answer to you. Well, do good, avoid evil, and purify the mind. And that's the formula for happiness and well-being. Right. So I think it might be nice to end on a chant. Looking at my watch, I see it's 5:02. So maybe we could chant the universal verses on universal well-being, which is a very simple chant, and it really goes to the heart of the matter. Not only is it an inspiring chant, but it also has a little injunction at the end, which we can all benefit from. So we'll just end on that chant before we do the closing chant. So Wendy, if we could have the reflections on universal well-being on the screen, that would be very helpful. Might take a minute to get it. I don't know if he's listening. Be nice to have it on the screen so we can all chant it together. Wendy, are you there?
Yes, Nick, just on, I'm sharing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, let us chant the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. So I'll just do the closing homage. I'll just turn to the shrine and can chant that on page 16, I believe it is. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam Namasami, I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savakasangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, Sangham namami. I bow to the Sangha. Right, well, that concludes our evening together. Very nice to see you all. Next week, Martin will be in the hot seat with his guidance and meditation practice. Very experienced practitioner. We've known each other for getting on for 30 years or so. So we're sort of Dharma friends, as it were. Partners in crime, and the best crime there is, which is trying to wake up to the way things are. So I wish you all a good week, COVID-free, hopefully stress-free, and see you in a fortnight's time. Take care. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.